Bankers whispered to politicians, socialism will make you rich. 60 years behind the throttle, the new world is right on track. The United Nations Army will enforce their global plan. From Roosevelt to Clinton, they're traitors every man. Congress sold out the country, our treasury is broke. You can't redeem America with Federal Reserve notes. The ballot box quit working, the cartridge box is freedom's king. It's all over but the fighting, the fat lady's about to sing. They stole our silver, they stole our gold, they took our steel, they took our coal. They stripped our trees and robbed our roads and sold our jobs to Mexico. Congress sold out the country, our treasury's broke. You can't redeem America with Federal Reserve notes. The ballot box quit working, the cartridge box is freedom's king. It's all over but the fighting, the fat lady's about to sing. You can call me a right-wing wacko, I read the writings on the wall. I also read the Bible, God's hammer's about to fall. Sold out. The ballot box quit working, the fat lady's about to sing.
To bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington.
We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast. The German news agency...
We interrupt this program to bring you a news bulletin from Washington.
Special report, verdict sparks violence. National Guard...
Local governments almost have to go with their hat in their hand.
We don't answer to the taxpayers or to your congressman, and we don't take no from anyone. We just want to take your land. Big barn. Now we'd like to talk about that barn you plan to build out in your backyard. We have a special building fee. Just give us 40 acres free. Because we don't answer to the taxpayers or to your congressman, and we don't take no from anyone. We just want to take your land. And if you don't comply, we have ways to change your mind. We'll do almost anything to get our way. So just sign the dotted line. It's for the good of all mankind.
Now, scheduled coming up in about 15 minutes, we're going to have Walter Burian on to talk about the biggest game in town, one of the biggest scams in the world, not just in this country. And frankly, you're not going to hear this anywhere else. We're going to be talking about the comprehensive annual financial reports. I actually have the comprehensive annual financial report from 1999, and this is from the Comptroller's office, Carol Keaton Rhinelander, Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts, and this is a scaled-down comprehensive financial report. It's only 295 pages long, phone book size, though, compared to what it was in 1998, and you've seen us on the air with the 1998 comprehensive annual financial report. I tore apart the file room at my office today dug through 20 boxes and couldn't find it, but in later shows we will have that. And you can go to the state free of charge and get 99, 98, 97, 96, going back 20 plus years, free of charge. They will give those to you. But never in the media, never in the press will you hear about the comprehensive annual financial report. 99's, 2000 isn't out yet, comes out a few months after the fiscal year ends, which is back in October, but it's still not out yet. They have the Capitol and the nice, fireworks going off above it. The year before that, it has the Guadalupe Mountains and cactuses and, pretty shot. No expense is spared. This comprehensive annual financial report is not as lavish as the previous comprehensive financial reports, and it does not give all of the numbers. And that is because of the pressure of myself and hundreds of other Americans in the media, in the alternative press, access TV, syndicated talk radio that is not yet controlled in many cases, reporting on this. You're saying, Alex, you're talking about a comprehensive annual financial report. I'm about to change the channel. Boring taxes. We know government's corrupt. We know they're pulling all kinds of scams on us. What are you talking about? Why should we care about this? Because it's the biggest game in town, folks. This is why your police are now wearing black ski masks. This is why they're getting armored personnel carriers. This is why cameras are going up. This is why they've put up microphones all over Austin, Texas, to little or no fanfare. This is why we're being wired for sound. This is why our driver's license have a digital thumbprint on them. This is why we're losing national sovereignty. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the comprehensive annual financial reports and states, counties, cities, water districts, school districts especially, all have these. And if you type in CAFR, or type it all the way out, comprehensive annual financial report, into a search engine, you will see thousands of links to counties, to cities, to states, and to the federal government bragging, going back over years. Stuff going back to probably 1990 is on the web. The federal government has a whole website on this, openly admitting this galactic-sized fraud we're about to expose yet again here on the air. Now, hold on to your hat, ladies and gentlemen. Strap yourselves in for what I'm about to tell you, and this is 100% proven from the state's own numbers, the county, the city, the feds, you name it. Let me give you an analogy to bring this down to earth. Let's say, hypothetically, I make $100 a week. Alex Jones makes $100 a week, hypothetically. But I tell my family, my wife and children, which I don't have, but again, it's a hypothetical example. I tell my wife and children that our budget, that we've got to stay on budget, that I only have on budget $2 a week. Now, I talk to my family. They see me doing bills. I put out a report on our finances every month. My wife reads it and looks at it. Absolutely amazing. She is thinking that we only have $2 a week to operate on. And I go over in a week. I spend $3. We're $1 on our budget in a deficit. We're $1 in the hole. What are we going to do about it? How can we stop this? We're in deep trouble. Honey, you're going to have to get a second job. I'm going to have to get a second job to pay for this. Now, I could have used $1,000 a week and said it was, I told my family that I have, $50. I'm using $100 because it's an easy number to understand. That's what government does. I didn't tell her about the 98. She doesn't know where I'm banking it, where I'm investing it, where I'm blowing it, what I'm doing with it. All she knows about is my budget that is $2 a week, and then I've gone over and I'm in a deficit. And to pay off that extra $1 a week we're spending, because our budget's $2 and we spent $3, because she doesn't know about the other $98 that I really made that week, she's going to have to go out and get another job to pay off that debt. This is what the state of Texas, that Travis County, that Austin, Texas does. In 1998, in the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the state of Texas had a $435 billion surplus. A $435 billion surplus. It was right there on page 8, on page 7, on page 6, just like the 1999 version. right there in their own report, ladies and gentlemen. Right there in their own report for the whole world to see. Every major media outlet gets a copy of this. They print up hundreds of thousands of them for the state of Texas. You pay for it. It goes out to all the major bond houses, all the major mutual funds, all the major companies like Xerox and Ford and you name it, Monsanto's. They all get it. This is the stuff that city managers and county managers and the financial directors talk about. This is the stuff they live, the stuff they breathe. They had $435 billion in Texas in surplus. And by surplus, I mean the Roman Empire had, had 1 million slaves at one time, but did they have a surplus? No, they always wanted more. Wino's got 2 bottles of whiskey, but is that a surplus? No, he always wants more. The point is, these aren't even surpluses to them. They want more. So back in 98, remember Bush was having the big fight with the Democrats on the surface over the $6.9 billion surplus. We had this huge surplus. Bush was bragging, look how fiscally conservative we've been. We have this surplus. And there was this big phony fight. They finally decided to give back Texans $2.2 billion in sales tax cuts. Okay? This is what they did. I mean, folks, this is so simple, it's hard to explain. So they were telling you about a $6.9 billion surplus, extra money, and then had a big fight over where it should be spent or if it should be given back to you, when they really had $435 billion that was profits on investments. And we're going to have Walter Burian on a little bit later. We're going to go into great detail on this. It's one of the biggest secrets around, just like the Federal Reserve, being private and having private stockholders and being run for profit. There are no reserves. You can't audit it. It's just there, printing the money, ordering the Federal Treasury to do so. This is the scam. This is the biggest game in town. This is how they're running the whole ball of wax. This is how they're ruling over us. And the big news is, get ready for this, that they own over half the stock market, that is state, county, city, and the federal government, that they own 70+% of Xerox, using an example, 80% plus of Ford. This is years-old numbers. They own the majority of every publicly traded company of any size. They own almost all of the stock in the Dow Industrial 30, the top 30 stocks. They own most of the NASDAQ. They own a large portion of privately held companies like Dell. They own a large portion of the stock that Gates hasn't turned loose of in Microsoft, in Intel. Motorola is almost completely owned by the government. This is the definition of organized crime. But yet they sell you at the city level when the city of Austin has billions of dollars of surplus. Capital Metro does. They're pulling in billions every year. They tell you you got to have a tax increase or the schools are going to close. We got to have a tax increase or the potholes won't get filled. We got to have a tax increase or there won't be emergency radios in the fire trucks and EMS, in the ambulances. A patent, erroneous lie. Now you understand why government is so-called privatizing utilities and privatizing hospitals and privatizing roads and privatizing everything. Because they already own it all. Any sector they start privatizing means they own over half of it. Like when you hear out in California the big power crunch, whether it's because of privatization, the cities and counties in the state own 80%. That was even in the Associated Press today, of those power plants. Now, wait a minute. Before so-called privatization, it was actually privately held predominantly. Up is down, down is up, black is white, white is black. I want you to think about the magnitude of this. Because when they tell you that you've got to pay more taxes because of the deficit on the budget, that's like if I made $100 a week and I told my wife, our budget is $2, and that's all she knew about. She didn't know about the other $98 I'm making a week. All she knew about was the $2. We go over that budget of $2, she's going to have to get a second job because she believes that we're in the hole. When in truth, I'm investing and saving or blowing $98 a week, and she doesn't even know about it because in the economic world today, everything is budgets. Take the federal government, $34 trillion surplus. You count state and local and water districts and schools in surpluses, that is in liquid cash each year, profit off of investments. Profit off of investments. $60+ trillion, federal, state, local. Because the budget is the money they have coming in to pay the actual services. You'll take a state like New Jersey in 1989. $17 billion in bills and services and lighting and power for the government buildings, for the roads, for everything. They made $80+ billion in profits on investments. So you had $60+ billion being reinvested. It's an endless cycle. Within another 5 years, the government will own all of the stock that you do not privately held, and what the people hold is going to be such incredible peanuts compared to it, it won't even count. Now, how many of you knew that big companies, when they have stockholder meetings, have city managers and portfolio managers and folks from the National Association of Counties and Cities and governors there as the top people in that hall with that CEO up there? How many of you knew that people from Travis County, top officials, travel the country weekly to New York and Boston and Los Angeles and even here in Austin to go to these stockholder meetings and to see how their stock is doing? How many of you knew that? And here's the really big bombshell. How many of you knew that with the $60+ trillion surplus that is going on right now with state, federal, and local, that you could have all the government services that are here, expand them according to population, expand them taking inflation into account? You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that we would never have to pay taxes again, never pay taxes again, and that we would get a yearly or monthly, depending on how we wanted it, annuity check in the tens of thousands of dollars yearly. Now, you don't believe that? Alaska does it. Alaska has a system close to what we're talking about. And their people this year got $3,000. And that's just a small bit of what the oil and gas revenue is that the state takes in. And the people don't even pay taxes in Alaska. 1 million people living in Alaska, and they're not even paying taxes, and they're getting paid by the government. And that's not welfare, folks. That's not, you can't have a man in the house, and we're going to break up your family, and you got to put your kids on Ritalin and Prozac, and then we'll give you enough to barely live in a rundown rat hole that the government operates. We're talking about money coming directly to you. We're talking about never paying taxes again, phasing taxation out in 3 years. What is the alternative? The alternative is to allow state, local, and federal governments, school districts, water districts like the LCRA, building their giant complexes everywhere, to continue to take your tax money and invest it in the stock market, buy actual companies, start their own businesses. I mean, think about this, and they'll run everything. They already basically do. Think about the magnitude of that. They're telling you you got to dig deep and tighten your belt to pay off the deficit, the federal deficit, when the feds have $30+ trillion in absolute cream off global investments. Forget the bills, things that they're slated they have to pay off in the future. All that's on the budget. They put all the losses, all the expenses on budget, and then tell you about the budget, and never talk about the comprehensive annual financial reports and what their actual cash gross annual receipts are from turnpikes and sales taxes and fines and fees and regulatory payments and all of this, and port authorities. The list goes on and on. Walter Burien was at the highest levels, running a large company in the World Trade Center, doing all of this stuff 10 years ago when he found out about it. When he found out, he's going to tell you the story. And I didn't believe Walter Burien 2 years ago when I found out about this. He's on the air saying, Texas in 98, let's use your state, Alex. He goes, I'm on the computer right now on the government's own websites. You can all check it out for yourself. Was $435 billion. And I'm like, Walter, that's not true. So what happens? Max, who's in the control room right now, goes down. Where'd you go? The State Attorney General's office? And he gets the 98 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. This is the 99. And there it is on page 6, 435. Yeah, the Comptroller's office. $435 billion surplus. And we're reading in the newspaper every single day. We're seeing it in the paper every day that there was a $6.9 billion surplus, and there was a big fight over if we were going to get any of it back, and we got $2 billion back. So we got $2 billion back. They told us it was $6.9 billion surplus when it was really $435 billion. The city of Manhattan, ladies and gentlemen, in 1989, with their own numbers, and I've seen them, had $1.2 trillion in cream surplus off the top. Not the stuff that had to stay in investments, not the paying for the schools or the buildings or leases or fines or fees or new equipment or paying employees. That's all in a little bitty budget over here. Tens of billions of dollars for Manhattan. But trillions of just cream. No wonder the cops are wearing black ski masks. No wonder there's armored personnel carriers driving around. No wonder they're building prisons everywhere. We're basically their slaves, ladies and gentlemen. Trying to inform people. We're talking about the biggest game in town with the man that did the equivalent of proving the world was round, like Galileo. It's something so huge, so monolithic, documented by the states, by the counties, by the cities, but no one in the press, no one in the media will talk about it. Governments are running gigantic surpluses. They're buying up everything, most of the industries. We already used the example of Xerox and Ford. It's a total takeover. They're building their own little empires. I give you Walter Burien, and now a lot of folks are out there copying his work, and that's great. Former guy that did all the accounting for the Air Force and their investigations in accounting is now out there calling himself CAFR Man, CAFRman.com. A lot of folks are coming forward on this, but this is the person that did it, and he did 2 hours with me on the radio today, and now he's joining us again for this Access television show, and I appreciate Walter Burien doing this. This is the only place you'll see this type of information, ladies and gentlemen. Walter, good to talk to you.
Good evening, Alex.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Joining us from your home out in Arizona. I want you to take a couple minutes out and just tell folks about Walter Burien, how Walter Burien found out about the biggest game in town, and who really runs this planet, and then later solutions to stop it. It's pretty exciting stuff.
All right, going back about 10 years ago, I stumbled across the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. I was a commodity trading advisor, one of the first tenants of the World Trade Center back in 1978. Did a national news line coast to coast on commodities. Back in 1990, there was a governor who got elected by the name of Jim Florio in New Jersey. And he got elected on a no new tax platform. As soon as he got into office, $2.8 billion tax increase, the largest in the state's history. Well, the public was not pleased. And one of the local radio stations, 101.5 FM, two DJs, John and Ken, started doing rabble-rousing, taking calls from listeners on examples of waste and misspending. I was listening on the first 2 days. I heard people calling in on examples of 5,000, 15,000. The highest figure I heard was 85,000. And I pulled out the budget report and looked at the billions of dollars that the state was dealing with, called into the radio program, and I said, come on, guys, you're missing the whole point. The state is dealing with billions of dollars. if there's fraud, waste, and misspending taking place, it's taking place on the tunes of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars.
And that was using the budget, where they try to give us tunnel vision to just look at the budget. That's what brought you into the comprehensive annual financial report. You started doing a little bit of your own rabble-rousing when John and Ken challenged you, didn't they?
Correct. They challenged us to start an organization to repeal the tax increase. 10 of us got together. I incorporated a group called Hands Across New Jersey. With the help of John and Ken, rabble-rousing 24 hours a day around the clock, we had our first rally down in Trenton, New Jersey. People converged from all the shore points in New Jersey. We had caravans heading to Trenton. 115,000 people converged on Trenton and shut the city down. But in the interim, I said I better start looking at the revenue, budget, and finance. Being that I was a commodity trading advisor, large numbers did not bother me. $1 in a billion, it's just a number. And I started looking at the budget report, and I noticed that all of the cash cow generators of state government, New Jersey Turnpike, Garden State Parkway, Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, no revenue shown on the budget report. I didn't see any large return from investment funds on the budget report. And I said they have to have a two-tier accounting structure here because I'm not seeing the complete picture. Now, the director of the budget, his name was Richard Keevy. He was on vacation until the following Tuesday of that week. I called his lower assistant, and the conversation went just like this. Hi, this is Walter Burien. I'm working on a report for Richard. I have to have it done by Tuesday when he gets back from vacation. I need all the figures on the autonomous agency accounts, interest accounts, investment accounts. And he goes, oh, you want the comprehensive annual financial report. Bing, first time I heard that before. He goes, yeah, can you send me a copy? He goes, well, I don't know. You better speak to Mark, the next one down from Richard. I called Mark up. Hi, Mark, this is Walter Burien. I just spoke to Jim. I'm working on a report for Richard. I have to have it done by Tuesday when he gets back. I need the comprehensive annual financial report sent to me right away. Got it that Friday. Being a bottom-line type person, I wanted to see what the totals were. Now, on liquid assets, investment assets for the state, in the comprehensive annual financial report, it was standing at about $188 billion. Now, I start looking for the total cash gross receipts, the number one question IRS asked in an audit. Found it on page 174 under cash additions, all agencies, all departments, all sources. Here's a state with a declared service budget of $17 billion that was bringing in $86,799 million in cash for the year. I learned the definition of syndicated organized crime right there on the spot and the principle of operation. The principle of operation was anything that was a cost and an expense, they left under the budgetary basis, and the public footed 100% of the bill for 100% of the services. Anything that was a profit center had the ability of being a profit center, large investment fund that generated substantial revenue, totally restricted by statute for no tie or inclusion whatsoever with a budgetary basis. And in New Jersey's case, they were bringing in $69 billion a year over what they were bringing in on the budgetary basis through taxation, fines, and fees.
And for the lay person out there, boil that down for them. The difference between the budget and the real set of books, the comprehensive annual financial reports.
Well, up until this point, and making this discovery, I always heard budget report. We have a shortfall of budgetary revenue. We have to increase taxes. Our budget is, for the school, for the police. We have to increase taxes. And the budget report is strictly the annual operating costs for that year. What they're bringing in, what they're supposed to be spending. It does not mention the total investments. It doesn't mention the total income, and it doesn't mention the total net worth. Just as yourself, Alex, if you're making $100,000 a year and your budget for operating your house was $30,000 a year, you could audit your $30,000 budget 100 times over, account for every nickel, dime, and penny. If you spent $29,000 this year on your budget, you'd have a $1,000 surplus. If you spent $31,000 on your budget for operating your house, you'd have a $1,000 deficit under your budget.
And there's no discussion of the other $70,000.
Correct. And also no discussion of your $1.5 million net worth that you've been building up over the decades. Never a mention. There are 3 words that a politician or the news media will not mention. Basic words. or expressions. The first one is, what is the total income? Gross receipts. Number 2, what are the total investments? Number 3, what is the net worth? And there's actually a fourth, which is very important. What is the growth? What has the growth been in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years? Arizona is a good example. If you look at the 1984 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the state's service budget is $1.8 billion, and it shows total gross receipts of $2.1 billion, about a $300 million difference. 15 years later, going into the year 2000, a service budget reaching $14 billion and total gross receipts of $22 billion. So in the course of 15 years, a 1,000% increase in the revenue taken from the populace. That type of increase is unjustifiable by any means in a free society if it wishes to remain free. And the sound bites are thrown out to the populace, always. We have a shortfall of revenue for our school district. Look, crime, the little old lady's home, whatever. The politicians are using whatever sound bites they can throw out. They keep the public from looking at basic comprehension. What are the total cash gross receipts? All. What are the total investments? What's the total net worth? Never mentioned, never discussed. They always refer to the budgetary basis, as they, excuse my French, laugh their butts off all the way down to the bank every single day. We've allowed the vault door to stay wide open for the last 50 years. And by leaving the vault door open, in fact, with most people saying, vault? What vault? Those sharp little crackers, the ones running this show, okay, on composite government wealth in the upper echelon, you're not dealing with the Joe Six-Pack crowd betting $5 on Dallas. These are some of the sharpest crackers on the face of the planet who are quite ruthless, that have worked diligently to build their little empires within composite government and by use of the investment funds. And they know exactly what they're doing. They knew that they needed the cooperation of the syndicated media and education. The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report was created in 1946.
Same year as the United Nations by the same people.
Correct. It was a plan, an implemented plan to take over the wealth.
And it's not a conspiracy. It's right here in Texas for 99 and 98, $435 billion surplus right there in it on page 6. But they were telling us that we had to increase taxes for the children. My point is, look at all the things they've done. The homes they've stolen, Walter, in the name of property taxes from old people that couldn't pay. The families that have been wrecked.
Do a reality check,
well,
Alex.
People busting down doors, raiding people's houses who supposedly haven't paid taxes, bank accounts being seized. All of this in the name of we got to run the government. We got a deficit on our budget. Meanwhile, you have this $60+ trillion today with state, federal, and local monies. And earlier on the radio today, we talked about how if we took that money, invested it with even a small rate of return of 4 or 5%, we could phase out all forced taxation within 3 years. And that's real math, real numbers. Instead, they're buying up everything. They're taking control. The big question is, Walter, where are they putting all of this money? The states, the counties, the water districts, the school districts, the feds. Where are they investing all this so-called surplus money?
The list is too long to go through. And the
example of
Xerox
Corporation.
Looking, no one's seeing, so they have carte blanche to do what they want.
The example of Xerox Corporation.
I'm going to repeat a conversation I had with a heavyweight from California about 2 weeks ago. I briefed him on the aspect of setting up an annuity pension fund for the resident property owners and taxpayers, by which the surplus revenues are deposited into this account. Venture and enterprise projects, which the government owns, which no way they should own, like golf courses or real estate venture projects, are sold back into the private sector, and that money is consolidated into the annuity pension fund. And where overgrowth took place, downsizing where appropriate. I gave the example of Arizona and their growth. All three areas create a phenomenal amount of revenue. And that annuity pension fund is written in stone, having the set principle of operation of supplementing that city or county's budgetary basis until canceled. In other words, you can phase out all forced taxation. And in fact, with good, prudent financial management, you'll have a surplus occur where you can issue a dividend return back to the resident property owners on top of no taxation. Now, the heavyweight said to me, he goes, Walter, that is perfect. That's what should have been done a long time ago. But it's such a massive structure. How do you ever possibly plan on implementing such a structure? My response to him was, I said, it's already been done. I said, composite government pension funds are standing at $28 trillion. They generated $4.3 trillion last year. Total taxation in this country, federal, $1.8 trillion. If you take all local taxation, about $1.6 trillion. You're standing right now at about $3.5 trillion in total forced taxation in the entire country. The government pension funds generated substantially more than all taxation in this country. Through administrative action, you can establish the exact same program for elimination of all taxation in this country and implement it within 3 years, and in most cases phase out all forced taxation in this country.
Now, Walter, the point I made on the radio today is people are addicted to their paltry little government paychecks, to the chicken feed we're given, the money they're using to break up the families. Can't have a man in the home. If you don't have a man in the home, we'll pay you. We'll put you in a nice slum. We'll ship in drugs so we can put your sons and daughters in prison. This police state system, people want their chicken feed. They want it. Even at the current numbers with a $60 trillion surplus, with state, local, and federal governments telling us they're actually running deficits when their own documents that they circulate amongst themselves brag that they basically rule the entire country and own almost everything, we have to make the point to people that even if nothing was downsized, even if things were expanded for inflation, that if this money was invested, even at a low yield return, we could phase out all forced taxation in 3 years. Now, if you sold off the golf courses and the hotels and the motels and made the government dump these stocks and the rest of it, then what you would have is enough money, like they do in Alaska. Last year, people in Alaska got $3,000 apiece from the government, a paltry part of their oil and gas revenues that the state government was getting. Now, I mean, for people who don't understand what we're saying, let me boil it down to you folks one more time. In 1998, now the county, the city, the feds, the water districts, the school districts, countless other government agencies, healthcare groups, all this stuff, that they're supposedly public, government, they're telling us that they have to increase our taxes because we're running deficits. Then you read their own lavish reports, and all of them put them out because they trade these amongst themselves in this big empire building. They're all bragging to each other that they've got the biggest empires. Texas does it right here in this year's report from the comptroller. Not a word of the budget in here, folks. It's like me making $100 a week, but I tell my wife I make $2, and I tell her my budget is $2. She never hears about the $98. I spend more than $2. I spend $3. I say, honey, we're over budget $1. You're going to have to go get a job. And she goes, you know what? We got to tighten our belts. We will go get a job. Meanwhile, I'm investing that $98, or I'm saving that $98 every single week, and she never knows anything about it, and I'm taking her money and doing it. Well, we're the woman in the relationship. The government's the mean man here, to use popular nomenclature, and we're getting screwed. And the same folks that run the Federal Reserve run this system. And it is abominable. Walter, it's like on the radio today. We had a bunch of callers call in, and they still couldn't get over the fact that we have a deficit. Explain why they hype that up, the deficit pertaining to the budget compared to the real gross cash receipts the government's bringing in.
Do you remember the example I gave to you on the phone when we were talking privately of you having two neighbors?
Yeah.
Can I give that example?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, say, for example, you have two neighbors, Bob on your right side, Jim on your left side. Bob comes knocking on your door. Alex, lost my job. I got to pay the rent. Can I borrow $500? You're there. You're a nice person. You go, okay, here. Jim on your left side knocks on your door. He goes, hey, Alex, we're going down to the Bahamas this weekend. Drink Mai Tais on the beach. Do you want to come? We're flying out in my private Cessna. You're there. Sure, let's go. I can squeeze it in. You get back. Bob comes knocking on your door again. Hey, Alex, my wife's in the hospital. She's sick. She needs an operation. I need $2,500 or she's going to die. You're there. Okay. You give him $2,500. Jim on your left side knocks on your door again. Hey, Alex, we're flying over to Zurich for the weekend. I'm going to have breakfast. Do you want to come? You're there? Sure, I can squeeze it in. Well, you're going to watch Jim on your left side closer than a hawk waiting for what's going to happen next. Bob, you cringe if you think he's going to knock on your door. You don't even want to think about him. Government constantly keeps taking more and more and more, and they have the public cringing. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want anything to do with it. I'll pay my divvy and forget about it until next year. And they kept perpetuating their game over and over again. And the tens of thousands of people involved within the syndicate, and it is a syndicate, a corporate syndicate, sat there smiling and laughing every single day all the way down to the bank.
Now remember, folks, this is not speculation. Walter we're building a website. There are dozens of other websites of people that have copied Walter's expose, which Walter's actually happy about. So you type in CAFR into the net, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, thousands of links will pop up. 98% of them are government bragging. Here's our Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Counties, cities, water districts, the feds bragging about how they own 70+% of Xerox, how they own most of Ford, how they own most of Dell, how they own most of Coca-Cola, all of these publicly traded companies. It's a sick joke. So when you see that, I wanted to let folks be aware of exactly what that means so that they'll be able to write down.
Back when Microsoft was having problems with the court, the head of the New York State Retirement Pension Fund for the state employees came forward saying, we think Microsoft is a good company, and we're not going to sell off our 78 million shares of Microsoft. You know, in Texas, I think it was Austin or Houston, the Board of Education last year, or about 2 years ago, Disney had made an objectionable film.
Austin,
and the Board of Education said, we're going to divest ourselves of our multi-million-dollar holding in Disney. And the public's saying, what are you doing with $40, $35 million in Disney? How much do you have in other stocks? You know, the bottom line is we left the vault door open, and a runaway freight train just started building up more steam, more momentum. And it's a law of physics that an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an equal and formidable force to slow it down. And the good point here, Alex, they implemented this program in 1945. It took off steam full force in 1980. And in that time period, you'll see the growth within government probably 4, 5, 6, 7, 800% in some cases. And they built a phenomenal...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back live. We've got Walter Burian on the line with us. We're going to recap who Walter Burian is, how he got involved in this, and exactly what we're talking about, and then launch into some case point examples of this biggest game in town. I would suggest that everybody out there tape this show, spread the word. This is real news, one of the top 10 stories of the century. We just keep bringing it to you over and over again. To boil it down for you, simply, the government is running gigantic surpluses. But like Walter Burian says, when is there really a surplus? If the Roman Empire had 1 million slaves, they could always use 1 million more. If a wino's got 2 bottles of Ripple, it's not a surplus. He wants more. They can't stop. The state of Texas has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in surplus. Total and complete surplus. This is the 1999 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. In the 1998 one, it clearly shows $435 billion surplus. Also shows numbers around that in the 99 version. Anybody can get this from the comptroller. If they try to refuse, Walter Burian will tell you places where you can. It's free of charge. Everybody should know. Go to the library. They'll have these. But you never hear about it in the press. You never hear about it in the media. You never learned about it in economics in college, did you? You heard about the budget. Going back to an analogy, I make $1,000 a week. I tell my wife I'm only making $100 a week. She sees me on the personal computer doing my budget on Quicken, QuickBooks, whatever. I tell her, honey, you're going to have to get a second job. We spent $150 this week. We're $50 over budget. Oh, dear, we'll lose the house. Oh, dear, we'll lose the new car. Oh, dear, we won't be able to go see, the family at this Christmas back in Chicago. Meanwhile, I'm going, because I've got 900 extra a week I'm socking away. And that number goes up if I made $1 million a week. And I only told you about 100,000. It'd be the same if I made $1 billion a week. And I only told you about a couple million of it. It would be the same if I made $1 trillion a week. And I only told you about a couple billion of it. And we have these huge discussions and media debates. And it was in the Statesman a few days ago that Texas Rainy Day Fund only has a few million in it. 80-something million. We need tax increases if a recession is coming. It's all about control when the state of Texas, in their own books, public record, but the media is so controlled, are running gigantic surpluses. The state of Texas, all the 50 states, every county, every city, every water district, school districts, they're all in business, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking to Walter Burien. Walter,
Alex,
recap.
What you just said there, I just thought of the perfect story from the past. Going back 10 years ago, Jim Florio, when he got elected on his no new tax platform and then had a $2.8 billion tax increase, he decided to go on a 2-week tour of the state every day, stopping at a new location and talking to the public. As the incorporator of Hands Across New Jersey, the largest tax protest group in the state, I managed to get down to his first location. It was Pete's Deli in Hamilton Township. Now, they had arranged for the entire syndicated media to be there. ABC was there, CBS, NBC, CNN, 150 reporters. And I sat down with Jim Florio and his wife at the table to have lunch for 45 minutes. We talked. Every network camera was hovered in over our heads. 150 reporters with handheld recorders going, shoved in all around the table.
And you were a top Security and Exchange
commodity trading advisor.
Yeah, commodity trading, big company up there doing a national deal. You took the challenge, a local talk show host, to talk about abuse, found out that the budget isn't 1/10 of the story. You've had this big rally, 115,000 people downtown. You're starting to learn about this stuff, and you're sitting there talking to the governor.
It's the governor, his wife, and myself, with every single reporter and every single camera trained on us. And I used this one example. I said, Governor Florio, myself as a financial advisor, if I had a stock issuance and I sold 100% of the stock in my company, and I made a $10 million profit this year, and I disclosed to my shareholders I made a $1 million profit, number one, that's misrepresentation. Number two, it's fraud. Number three, I'd be in jail. I said the state of New Jersey is conducting business as usual, doing the exact same thing, and they've enacted statutes to allow them to do what would be totally illegal for a public corporation to do. Now, I thought he'd try to skate around a response to that and go off in a different area. All the reporters are sitting there up on their toes going, ooh, 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 ooh. And Florio's response, I did not believe it. He looked back at me and said, I know. I've been trying to do something about that. They never let him out in public again. They canceled his entire tour, and not one word in the media.
Now, I've called around. The media gets the county, the city, the state, the federal. The newspaper, the Statesman here in town, every year gets a stack of these from around the country.
And they have for 25 years.
Why would the major networks and the major newspapers, why do they want these? Why do they get these, but don't tell us about them?
Because they are in 100% partnership with the game. When I learned this 10 years ago, that was my question. I was a commodity trading advisor, did a national news line, right in the middle of New York, in the hub of things. I never once heard of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and I said to myself, why did I not hear it on a TV show, the evening news, a talk show? Zilch, nothing. And here is the Holy Grail, the Bible of accounting for governments. My first step was I called the mailroom of the Department of Treasury to find out who it was sent to. I found out it was sent to every dean of every college. It was sent to every editor up and down the East Coast. It was sent to the CEO and every one of the directors from ABC, CBS, NBC. Now I'm starting to get mad. I then found out who it was sent to for ABC and NBC. I called their departments, and the conversation went just like this. Hi, this is Walter Burien calling from the Department of Treasury in New Jersey. We've been sending you our comprehensive annual financial report for the last 14 years. How many other states are sending you their report? And ABC was getting it from 38 states. NBC was getting it from 36 states. Now I'm getting mad. I'm starting to see a cooperative effort for non-disclosure. I then ask myself the next logical question. How much is the syndicated media making from composite government sources? You know, up front you would think of, federal grants, public education grants for media broadcasting, service commercials, city, county, state, federal. That was a substantial portion of the syndicated media's income. But then, realizing that composite government funds own the primary shares of major Fortune 500 companies, such as Xerox, over 78%, Motorola in the 60s, IBM, AT&T, they own that stock, and through the proxy votes, through the investment managers, they can exercise demands over those corporations on who to use on the marketing campaigns and the advertising. So they can direct more money to the syndicated media.
And this is why when we watch ABC, CBS, NBC, they have the same story with the same talking head looking the same, with the same advertisers in the exact same order every night, because they give us 3 different brands of the same slavery. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not speculation. I have in my hot little hands the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for Texas for 1999. Now, Walter, you, almost a year ago, when we first talked live on the radio, and you've talked about 40 million people since you got in your disclosure. I'm going to go through all of that, bringing all this forward. You said get comprehensive annual financial reports from 98 and before, because you said that now, because of your disclosure, they are starting to even try to water those down. My 98 one clearly says $435 billion surplus. That is just the cream off the profits of their investments, not even all their investments. And now it's only got 60-something billion. Now, I went and checked out what you said. You said it a year ago. You said it today on the radio. You said that the 99 reports that were coming out.
Take a look at 96.
Well, the point is, they're on to what you're doing. They're on to the fact that you're on to them, that people are waking up. How are they manipulating the reports? I mean, they say we have a little surplus now in Texas, $4 billion. They said it was 6.9 back in 98. But still, it's, 60-something.
Look at 96's report, and you'll see they listed the transactions they handled for local government.
Well, that's my point. This book has gotten smaller. This book isn't as lavish, and you've been talking about that. How are they manipulating the comprehensive annual financial reports because the news is starting to get out? How are they now cooking these books, too?
When I came up with disclosure, originally, 99 and prior, it was required to show all investment revenue, all income coming in from all sources in the combined financial columns. As of 99, they changed it to showing all investments revenue, all income, all revenue coming in necessary to meet obligations. There's a big difference.
So that's like saying, again, back to a budgetary manipulation. I need $500 a week to run my household, so I make my budget $500 and have everybody focused on the $500 when I'm really making $2,000 a week, hypothetically, and then people get wise. My wife gets wise, and I'm really making all these thousands of dollars I'm not telling her about. So I go, it's all right, honey. Here are those books. See? And then I only show her enough of the money, enough of the surplus to say, oh, I just had this in reserve in case I needed it.
I'll give you a key example from 10 years ago. As I mentioned, education is included in this game. Now, in the New Jersey's Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, it showed consolidation of the state universities and colleges under one financial column. I noticed right off the bat they had $8.5 billion in liquid investment funds. It showed that they made a $1.1 billion profit on their investment funds, for the year, bringing up their total to $9.6 billion. Are you with me?
Yes.
My next question in logical progression was, I wonder what the total tuitions are paid by all students attending college and universities in New Jersey. That was listed also, $644 million. So right off the bat, I said to myself, they made a $1.1 billion profit on their investment funds. The total tuition base for all students was $644 million. I said the kids could have gone to school for free for the year and gotten paid to go to college. Now, what actually happened that year was they cited a shortfall of budgetary revenue and had a 7% tuition increase. This is back in 1989.
Now, that's just with a university running a scam. Let's talk about some of the smaller examples. You used a case in a small county where you live in Arizona now. Tell us about that.
An example regarding...
the health care.
Oh, that was in Tucson, Arizona, Pima County. A couple years back, the healthcare program, citing a shortfall of operating funds, said that they're going to have to cut back on services and turn away people unless they had a $6 million tax increase. They were supposedly $6 million short. So they presented to the public for a $6 million tax increase. Now, you know, they forgot to mention they were short $6 million for the year, and the $6 million would be every year thereafter. But the public, saying we can't turn away the sick and the elderly, voted on the $6 million tax increase. Well, a federal auditor, retired of 30 years, he looked at the health care program's financial statement. He called me back immediately and said, Walter, they invested in one shot $35 million in the local government investment pool. By investing $35 million in the local government investment pool, that's what created the $6 million shortfall in their operating funds. If they had not invested $35 million with the local government investment pool, they would have had a $29 million surplus for the year.
So, again, the classic thing we hear on the local news in Austin, got to have a massive, $300 million tax increase or bond proposal for the schools or they'll be shut down. Got to spend all the tax money for Capital Metro, a few $100 million extra year, or that'll be shut down. We got to spend a few extra $100 million, or there won't be potholes getting filled and emergency radios in the ambulances and fire trucks. This is the same thing all over the country. I've seen the stories. The people go, I'm paying a lot of taxes. I'm in the hole. I may have to sell my bass boat. I may have to get into the college tuition because all these property taxes and sales taxes and all these other fines and fees. But damn it, we'll do it for the kids, for the old people, for the education, for the potholes, when they had money to pave the streets literally in gold.
And they laughed all the way down to the bank.
So boiling it down for the simple minds out there, and I'm not being sardonic, I'm not being patronizing to you, condescending, but I have to be honest with some of the viewers. They're going, but we got a huge deficit. Federal government's got a $5 trillion, $500 billion deficit. I heard it on the news. Walter, the numbers I've crunched are off the government's own sites on the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Anybody can go there on the web. Federal government. They don't hide this stuff. They just know the media won't cover it, so you won't listen out there. They've got this $30+ trillion cream at the top. $30+ trillion cream. Just with the federal government, the states and the counties and the cities have more. This racket is everywhere. You talk about Pima County in Tucson. That was just with a hospital fund from the city where they spend, invest this $30+ million, so they have a budgetary shortfall of $6 million. Don't tell you about that. With the federal government, we hear all the time, well, we have this deficit, so we got to tighten our belts. We have to have a tax increase. We can't even have a tax cut. That's really what's driving this fraud, is people thinking we're in financial trouble when there's really giant surpluses.
What's driving the fraud is the easy ability to build phenomenal empires just by structuring it and implementing it with the public sitting there saying, is there something going on? Not having the foggiest clue. And being that the public left the vault door open for the last 45, 50 years, phenomenal empires have been built, large and small.
Well, I want to explain something that we closed the radio program today with. And we've got plenty of time now. You're going to be with us for probably another 40 minutes or so as we tape this program. But the point I wanted to make here is, Walter, I didn't believe you 2 years ago. I went and I checked this stuff out. You're a conservative guy. You're in there about the numbers, the facts, financial planner.
Commodity trading advisor.
Yeah, commodity trading advisor. You're sitting there looking at this. It's so big, it's like an elephant in the living room. It's hard to even discuss. It's like the simplest things. A lot of people can't even grasp it. But you said it, and you know, it's funny. I'll have the CEO of Taurus Firearms on, the fourth largest gun manufacturer, and I'll say, Mr. Morrison, are you aware that the United Nations is taking over the gun manufacturers, and that this UN, that this attack on the Second Amendment is from the UN? He goes, yes, I've been in State Department meetings. I thought he would laugh at me. This is a major CEO of a $100 billion company. He says, Alex, he says, it's absolutely amazing. He said, they're coming in, and I've been at tables with the UN at the State Department with other CEOs, and they say, we're shutting down the gun manufacturers. Either you join us and sell out to us, or your business is gone. It's all over for you. Andrew Cuomo of HUD threatening him, threatening all these other CEOs. He said it was organized crime. He said he thought he was in Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. Then you talk about how in 1946, 1945, same year the UN is set up in this country runs the New World Order. It's not coming after us. We are it. We're the slaves right inside Rome. That they set up the 1313 patch out of Chicago, same year as they set up the UN, to formalize and standardize the National Association of Counties, the National Association of Cities, the National Association of Governors.
And in 46, they created the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
And then they created the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. So it looks normal. It looks standard. Hey, everybody's doing it. And then they go in and buy up all the corporations with our tax money and build their own empires and control it. You know, you have the communism and the socialism publicly being funded by the Rockefellers to consolidate power overseas, where they couldn't take people down, where monarchies wouldn't play ball with them. I mean, it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, and now it's all coming together. It's all coming down. You talked about how you crunched the numbers of the states with the highest tax rates, the biggest governments, the biggest surpluses, with gun laws. Tell the viewers about that.
About 4 years ago, I did a little chart comparison. I looked at states with the least stringent gun laws, and I looked at the states with the most oppressive gun laws. I made a chart, least at one end, most oppressive on the other end. I then looked at the states with the most taxes, fines, and fees levied per populace, and the state with the least taxes, fines, and fees levied. Put them in order, made a chart. Well, guess what? If you put the charts back to back, an exact parallel. The more taxes, fines, and fees extorted from the populace, the most oppressive gun laws possible. The least amount of taxes, fines, and fees extorted from the populace in a state, the most lax on the gun laws. Exact parallel.
Elaborate on that.
Well, if you go into a state where, like Vermont or Montana, very low taxation, least oppressive, even though they're catching up with everybody else, they had very lax gun laws. We go into a state like New Jersey where the public is being extorted from any which angle and shape and form from all areas of government, city, county, and state, and the police and the judicial, maximum fines. You have the most stringent gun laws possible in this country.
So it's simple. With financial slavery, with total governmental/private fraud in basic fascist collusion, with this type of development, you're going to have a disarmed population. Hence, Hitler was for gun control. Stalin was for gun control. Mao, they disarmed the slaves. Hence, the United Nations is for gun control, because it was founded by the very banking interests that now run this nation, that run this world, openly funded by them, the same people that set up Patch 1313 in Chicago to start the National Association of Counties, the National Association of Cities, of Governors, of Mayors, of County Commissioners, to standardize the policies.
And here's a very dangerous point, Alex, being that they have already accomplished control and ownership of the wealth of this country from the public now becomes a liability. So it is in their interest right now to eliminate a good chunk of the public. Because they now own the wealth. They control the wealth of this country.
I was on some of the financial sites, Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter, and others this weekend doing research on that. And they have composite indexes on there, what the fastest growing part of the economy is. Until a month and a half ago, it was still tech stocks, the internet. Number 2 had always been prison industry. Walter, it's now number 1. They're building prisons everywhere. They're militarizing the police.
If you look at the prison industry and the court system, it is the most profitable corporation in this country. The court system and the prison system generates more money than 10 of the largest Fortune 500 companies in this country.
Put together. And that's another public number. I mean, folks, the fact is they have convinced you that the government's in trouble, the state, the local, the water district. They need more money. They need more regulations. They need more taxes because they're bankrupt. When in truth, they own 78% of Xerox, 60% of Motorola, every major traded company, all of the Dow 30. You've looked at the Dow 30. What percentage of the Dow 30 in the aggregate do state and city and federal agencies own?
You're talking, if you look on an individual basis, stock by stock, composite government wealth right now is the market. We're talking probably about in excess of 70% of the ownership is controlled by composite government funds. The public is insignificant in the marketplace.
And you looked, and to use a case point example, the city of Manhattan. You've got those numbers there. I know you did today on the radio, and I, after the show, went and actually checked it out. It's right there. They brag about this. In 1989 or 1990, you looked at Manhattan, not just states with hundreds of billions. What did Manhattan have, the city of Manhattan?
On my progression, after looking at the state of New Jersey, I looked at the state of New York. And the state of New York had approximately $535 billion. And then I got the city of Manhattan's report, which covered the boroughs, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and so forth. They had $1.2 trillion, more than the entire state had on their books.
And that's in cream. That's in private investments.
And also, a couple of years later, Manhattan was crying poverty and had a tax increase.
And then you look at
the bailed out by the feds, supposedly.
And you look at the so-called. Let's use another example for folks. Let's throw it all in their face. Orange County.
Orange County. You had a couple of slap-happy investment managers who were playing around with derivatives and got their fingers burnt. They lost $1.3 billion of the money.
Well, a county just with derivatives, the most speculatory, dangerous thing in the market, just $1.3 billion, just a county.
The derivative market, as said by Alex Greenspan several months back, he said he was concerned being that the derivative market was up to $80 trillion. And the government is the primary player in the derivative market. But Orange County attracted all of this attention. Now, one person happened to stumble across Orange County's comprehensive annual financial report. And he looked and he saw that they had $16 billion in profitable investments. They were only talking about their losing transaction.
But they couldn't control the media on that. It was out for a while that they lost $1.3 billion in a very speculative area of the market. But they had to have a tax increase, almost went bankrupt, so the people had to pay more, almost like that was done on purpose when they really had tens of billions of extra that was profitable in the market.
There's an economist by the name, and he owns a bank, Anthony Hargis, out in California. He looks at comprehensive annual financial reports, determines that local government's cash position, and determines how long could they operate existing from their existing cash without charging one nickel in taxes, fines, or fees. Now, in Orange County's case, when they were crying bankruptcy, they could have gone on for another 11.9 years, performing the exact same services without taxing one nickel before they ran out of cash.
And that's not taking into account if they invested the tens of billions of surplus dollars in that one county and then took the surplus of that and reinvested it. And if they didn't do that, they could have taken it and paid dividends, that's checks, to the property owners.
Well, the bottom line, to cut to the chase, is if the public at this point in time unifies with basic comprehension, if you capture 10% of the population with basic comprehension, you can administratively restructure government at this point in time to phase out all forced taxation in this country.
Well, Walter, I want to stop you. I want to get to that a little bit later. because for people that have just joined us, the audience gets much larger as the show progresses over 2.5 hours. I want to recap who you are, what we're talking about, what's happening, and why this is so important. Folks, I know when you hear about budget or money or taxes, you tune out, you're sick of it. It's been designed that way. You think government is bankrupt, in trouble. In truth, they are the most opulently rich and controlling class around. They are merged with private industry, and that's why the mainstream media won't even begin to talk about it. I want to briefly recap, Walter, exactly what we're dealing with here, and then I want to talk about the amazing solutions that you and others have and that will actually work.
Well, the bottom line is your listeners now know why Gorbachev went Democratic.
People think they're free and put a lot more weight on their back.
More money, more control.
And you talked about if the American people were a gerbil, what are we doing right now?
Oh, we used to give the expression, the way the system works is they keep the chipmunk running on the treadmill, chasing the carrot. As through trickle-down economics, they provide just enough revenue to keep the chipmunk running at optimum proficiency as they tap off 80% of the energy produced.
And I also had my own little analogy, and I think I'm going to put an editorial on the website or maybe make T-shirts up of it, talking about the massive government, how big it is, what it controls, 70% of the market, 70% of the companies.
Alex, just one quick notation. I noticed 45% of the revenue is invested internationally. They get some of their best rates of return on the international companies. I went shopping for Christmas. Every item I picked up said made in China. You now know the reason for NAFTA, GATT, the whole 9 yards. The government funds are investing with the international corporations, producing the product at 10 cents on the dollar and selling it back at 40 cents on the dollar here in the States, accentuating their profits.
And we're talking about water districts, counties, cities, the states, the feds, Texas with a $435 billion surplus every year that keeps getting invested into the trillions, and they're telling you that they're broke, ladies and gentlemen. Walter, talk about how China and its 1.25 billion slaves fits into all of this.
China?
You were talking about the investments over there through the companies owned by the government.
I'm breaking it down. Just saw the composite government funds in their notes section. They usually authorize about 10% of the revenue invested with a group called the Asian Development Authority and 10% of the revenue invested with the African Development Authority. And if you look at a comprehensive annual financial report, especially on one of the investment pools or one of the large government pension funds, it breaks down exactly where the money is invested, who's holding what, and the dollar amount. Everyone should get a copy of their state retirement fund for the state employees. It breaks down where the money is invested. And they'll see the majority in international stocks versus U.S. stocks at this point in time. The growth factor is more for international.
In fact, a lot of retirees and folks out there saying, hey, leave it alone. The system may be corrupt, but it's my pension. Explain that you have giant surpluses out of the pensions that are being invested that they'll never see.
Arizona, the total actuarial liability for all state retirees and participants in the plan for being 100% funded, all active employees and retired, required $14.5 billion. The current fund balance is verging on over in excess of $32 billion. The employees will never see that money and never benefit from it. The Arizona legislature a couple of years ago, being that the employers, the cities, the counties, the school districts, and the employees were contributing to something where no way they should be contributing one dime, and in fact they should have been getting substantial refunds back, they passed their own internal statutes to make the pension fund strictly participatory, requiring a minimum of a 2.18% contribution from the employee and the employer. So the government employees are getting shafted in many cases also.
So recapping, Walter, again, using the example of the comprehensive annual financial report for, give me a close shot, guys. Thanks. I want to say the crew's doing a great job. For 1999, and then you look at 1998, $35 billion surplus. Carol Keaton Rylander's own report right here, and you count all the counties. What is it, 100 of them in Texas?
Get your hands on 1996. In the notes section, it shows the transaction the state government made for local governments. They show $1.8 trillion in transactions for local government.
And that's nationwide.
No, that was state of Texas.
State of Texas.
1.8 trillion.
Why? I've got some of the past years. This is the last one that's out, 99. Why are the reports getting smaller and smaller now that you've been exposing them? And how do we get that other information that they're now cutting out of them?
You have to look at a prior year's comprehensive annual financial report and see where certain areas all of a sudden get clipped or disappear in their entirety. And then you have a lead list to say what happened to these funds, where can I see the accounting?
And that's all because a successful commodities trader and financial advisor in New Jersey found out that the whole thing is a giant stinking fraud 10 years ago and started talking about it 3 years ago and made a documentary film and has done hundreds of radio interviews. Now, suddenly, I remember years ago, Walter, you could call and get one of these pretty quick. Sometimes they'll give the runaround. You have had a massive effect on others by talking about this ad. We need to keep pushing viewers. We're talking about budgets. We're talking about comprehensive annual financial reports. You're saying boring. Walter, recapping before we talk about the solutions. For people that have just joined us, explain the difference between budget, and how that's drilled into our head, and the comprehensive annual financial report.
Well, the beautiful point...
Explain the fraud to people, why this is the biggest game in town.
The beautiful point here is that being that the government, for the last, since 1945, created this structure to take over the wealth, and they were successful. They have done it. So we're talking $60 trillion in composite liquid investment wealth held by federal and local governments. That's a phenomenal increase in 30 years. Now, on the composite government pension funds, they generated $4.3 trillion last year. Total taxation in this country in 1999 was approximately $3.6 trillion, federal and local governments. So composite government pension funds generated substantially over total forced taxation in this country. Now, can anyone see, with simple administrative action, restructuring composite government through consolidation of the surpluses into an annuity pension fund set up for the resident property owners and taxpayers, sale of venture and enterprise projects, which government now owns, but they shouldn't, like golf courses, amusement parks, real estate ventures.
Hotels.
Sell it back to the private sector where it belongs. That generates a phenomenal amount of revenue for consolidation and into the annuity pension fund. And where overgrowth took place, downsizing, because they're collecting the money to pay for that excessive growth. So with downsizing, that revenue becomes available for allocation into the annuity pension fund set up for the resident property.
Yeah, we're about to get to that. The solution is $60 trillion in investments and cream and private that just keeps rolling. They've got 70% of the stock market. That is governments, state, local, federal. They're militarizing the police against us, treating us like slaves, squeezing us, saying they need more when they basically already own everything. Even your mortgage is predominantly owned by government interest.
I like to use one example, Alex, which is very simple and very basic, but 100% true. If every one of your listeners had an 11 and 12-year-old boy, and they gave him carte blanche to write their own allowance check each week, and you made $1,200 a week, within no time, they'd be cutting a check for $1,000 a week. And if you told them you're going to cut them back to $800 a week, they'd kick, they'd scream, they'd holler, they'd use any logic available to them to justify how an 11 and 12-year-old boy could not survive on $800 a week. There is no difference here whatsoever. You just have bigger boys and sharper players.
But recapping for those that are just joining us, I know you've gone over this 1,000 times, Walter, the difference between the budget that we always hear about in the press and this big secret, the comprehensive annual financial report that all the media and everybody else at the corporations know full well about because the government is their owners.
Well, the bottom line is the budget is strictly the annual operating expenses, what they're going to spend for the year and what they're going to bring in for the year.
So all of the losses are there?
The expenses for operating government and what they're going to tally and tax the public to perform these functions.
And people think that the budget is the whole financial universe of government and private industry, but in truth, it is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Isn't the second set of books, it is the books.
Correct. The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report will show the budget. They call it the General Purpose Fund, and it'll show everything else, all other income, the investments that have built up over decades and decades, the net worth of that government. You know, if you lost your job today, Alex, okay, how are you going to pay for your budget, for your house?
Well, I'd have to work for another radio network.
No, you couldn't get a job. You were disabled. If you had an investment fund, say built up over the last 20 years, equal to $1 million.
Well, see, I'm not like the government and these private corporations that work together. I'm not out there with cops squeezing people for money and taxing the daylights out of folks and all of this. I don't have any money.
I did a little logistical survey, even in my own hometown here in Prescott. I looked at taxes, fines, and fees levied against the public in traffic fines via population 20 years ago versus today. 600% increase per population. It's a revenue-generating venture. I mean, if you could pull people over and clip them for $100 any day of the week, you become a millionaire overnight, correct, Al?